Hello and welcome to today's Cybersecurity Summit Power Hour. My name is David and I'll be in the background answering any WebEx technical questions. If you experience technical difficulty any time during this WebEx event, please submit your technical issue in the Q&A panel and I will assist you. Please note that as an attendee, you're part of a larger audience today. However, due to privacy concerns, the attendee list is not displayed. All attendees will be in a listen-only mode for the duration of today's call, and as a reminder, this call is being recorded. We will be holding Q&A sessions throughout today's presentation. We encourage you to submit written questions at any time during the presentation using the Q&A panel at the bottom right of your screen. Please type your question in the text field and hit send, and please keep the drop-down as all panelists. I would now like to introduce your first speaker for today, Bradford Rand. Bradford, you now have the floor.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us. This is our inaugural New England Region Power Hour. We appreciate your time. We know time is of the essence right now. So firstly, thank you for those people that have gone to our Boston Cybersecurity Summits. Hopefully we'll be returning in 3, 4, 5 months, whenever. But right now, of course, we now are accepting and embracing the virtual world. So without further delay, I'm going to bring distinguished speaker Michael Pickett, Special Agent from the U.S. Secret Service, to give us our first security briefing. David, you can give it to Michael.
All right. I hope everyone can hear me well. First thing I'd like to go into today is who are not familiar with our task force model. We as a law enforcement agency try to work with both our academic partners and our business partners, sharing information and working together to defeat cybercrime. I know that's a very busy slide that you're looking at right now, but the general idea is we share information with our business partners and academia. As we get information from our criminal investigations, we like to share it with our academic partners. We share it to business. We give warning to business about what kind of threats are out there. And then we get information back from our partners, and together we are stronger, working against cybercrime, sharing information and working together to defeat the threats. But today, some of the things I'd like to talk about is what type of fraud schemes are out there, specifically with COVID-19 and the pandemic that we're all facing, how you can defend against some of these recent fraud schemes, specifically some concerns about VPN security, since so many of us are using VPNs as we work from home. And the last thing, not COVID related, but a recent fraud scheme that we've been seeing a lot of, I want to make people aware of, is a refund fraud, specifically using prepaid debit cards, buying gift cards, and then buying cryptocurrency. So going back to some of the things we're facing now with the pandemic, COVID-19, and so many people working from home, we're all familiar with phishing scams. Phishing itself is not new, but the recent developments that we've been seeing with the pandemic and so many people teleworking is that the criminals have changed their tactics slightly, specifically using the COVID-19 as another way to get people to get their information using phishing scams. So very much like the old phishing scams of the past, now they're using tactics like pretending to be a legitimate medical organization or a health organization, sending out emails with information or pretending to have information about the COVID-19. In addition, we're also seeing SMS phishing going on, and also malicious apps, all purporting to have information related to the pandemic and tricking people into giving up their information. So that the victims receive an email or a text or an advertisement for an app. They click on it, they give up their information, their login credentials. And this is especially important these days, as so many people are working from home. Their login credentials could lead to business email compromise. I know a lot of people in the audience are already familiar with business email compromise, but for those who aren't, this is basically when someone is able to take over someone's work email, look at the type of emails they're getting, for example, invoices from another company, and then copy a legitimate invoice, change where, for example, the direct deposit, what account the deposit might be going to, and send a new invoice and the business to send the criminal's account. Also, if they get the login credentials for their VPN, they can get into the business network and take advantage of that. Since so many people are now teleworking, more people are using their emails for business, more people are using teleconferencing. This increased reliance on telework is making it even easier for criminals to capture that information. So phishing is increasing now during this pandemic, and we're seeing increased incidents of phishing. So we're asking all the businesses out there, all those institutions out there, to use increased vigilance regarding your email. And since I know a lot of the audience, you're the CIOs, the IT people for your business, we ask that you pass that education on to the people in your businesses to have that increased vigilance. I know everyone's busy and they have a lot of things going on right now in their lives, but the best thing to do is try to get the word out there so that your employees having this increased vigilance know that they're targeted by these phishing scams. Another fraud scheme that we've been seeing a lot of examples of lately is the criminals purporting to be a legitimate charity and taking advantage of the charities that are on social media sites like GoFundMe accounts and pretending to be a legitimate charity and getting people to donate money to these charities and then just running off with the money, and it never gets to where it's supposed to be. So we're just putting out the word to have increased vigilance, to check out these charities. Just be aware that amongst all the very legitimate charities that are out there, there are some criminals who are exploiting people's generosity and trying to get them to donate and running off with the money. Another scam we've been seeing a lot of recently is that criminals are taking advantage of the online shopping websites, pretending to have either supplies or some kind of miracle cure or something that will help them protect against the coronavirus. They get people to pay up front, and then they never deliver on their goods. So we also try to put out the word to people to be aware of this fraud that's out there. There's a lot of cases of it. We're doing our best to track these criminals down and arrest them. But we want to get the word out there because there's a lot of fraud going on right now. And criminals are taking advantage of people's nervousness about the pandemic and trying to get that message out. So what can you do to defend against some of these cyber screens? Pretty much the same things you could always do. Always avoid clicking on unsolicited emails. And I know this audience, you're mostly the IT guys. Educating your employees to be wary of unsolicited emails, of attachments. Educating your employees to use caution with attachments, to be aware that they're going to be targeted by phishing scams. Educating your people to use only legitimate sources, to be aware of the fact that there's scammers out there who are taking advantage of this pandemic to try to put out false information just to get people to click on it and then get the malware on their systems. As always, be careful about revealing any personal information in an email. If you're going to donate to charity, make sure you check out whether or not it's an actual authentic charity. And I know that we have later on, we're going to have another speaker from CISA coming on. Don't want to steal the thunder, but they have an excellent website, and I attached the hyperlink on the slide. So it's an excellent resource for getting information on how to defend against the latest scams and fraud attempts. In this, I wanted to give specific attention to VPN security because so many employees right now are working from home, getting into their office network, using VPNs. It's especially important to revisit VPN security and make sure that your networks are secure. It used to be, just having a VPN was what people thought what you needed to be secure. But we know that some VPNs have vulnerabilities. You got to have to be aware of what vulnerabilities there are in the specific VPN that you're using, and make sure you stay up to date with your patches. So the risks are, as everyone's using VPNs to get into their home networks, the cyber criminals know that this is a very target-rich environment, and so they are upping their games when it comes to hacking into VPNs. Another problem is that because so many people are using VPNs and they're using them all the time, it's hard for IT guys to do those updates and patches because nobody wants the VPN to be taken down so those patches can be done. I know a lot of people are working off hours. A lot of people are in the boat where they're trying to do their kids' schoolwork during the day, and so they're doing their work for their job, at night at all odd hours. So a lot of businesses are finding it hard to take their VPN down to do those necessary patches and updates. But our message is that it's still very important to do those latest updates because the criminals are looking for the known vulnerabilities, and they're looking for a VPN that has vulnerabilities they can exploit. We know that the incidents of phishing have been increasing dramatically, and so just make sure your employees are aware of it. We highly encourage organizations to use some type of multi-factor authentication. I know there's a lot of different types of multi-factor authentication that are available. What type you use is up to you. I know none of them are perfect, but they're all an additional security that you can add on to your VPN, and we definitely recommend using multi-factor authentication. We know that some organizations, they have limited number of connections on the particular VPN. We know that that can be a problem, especially as the IT guys try to get back onto the VPN to do these, check the logs, check the patches, make sure everything's up to date, and do their IT work. Our message to businesses are make sure that there's enough VPN connections so your IT guys can get on there and do their job. Not only do you need to keep your VPNs up to date, but all the devices that connect to that VPN. So especially if your employees are using their own devices, make sure that they're as secure as possible. Make sure that your own devices are up to date with patches. And so even if you have a perfect VPN, if the devices on it have been compromised, they're still going to own your system. Once again, it gets back to educating your employees, make sure that they're aware to look out for phishing and other types of fraud. And in this busy time where so many people are teleworking, make sure that the IT guys are doing their traditional cybersecurity tasks, checking the logs, looking for those intrusion detection systems, making sure they're ready to respond if there's any indication of an intrusion. We recommend using multi-factor authentication on all your VPN connections. If you can't for some reason, just make sure that your workers are using strong passwords. And if you have any reason to believe that there's been a phishing, malware, or other cybersecurity intrusion on your network, don't hesitate to reach out and contact us. We'll reach out and work with you. We'll do our best to try to capture those criminals. We'll do our best to try to keep your network secure. And as always, we will keep your information confidential. We're not going to broadcast to the world that you've had an incident. We want you to feel free to come to us. And so we're going to keep your privacy utmost concern. One of the last things I wanted to talk to as a break from COVID-19 is another type of fraud out there that was happening before the pandemic, but is relatively recent, where we've been seeing criminal groups go out and they'll set up financial accounts, usually prepaid debit cards, using fictitious or stolen identities. They'll use those prepaid debit cards to go into large retail stores and buy gift cards. Usually what happens, one member of the gang will buy the gift cards. They'll go back to their car in the parking lot. They'll get online. They'll use the gift card to buy cryptocurrency. And yes, some cryptocurrency exchanges will accept gift cards to buy crypto, Bitcoin. They'll then put the sticker on the back of the card using a label maker. And then a member of the group will go back into the retail store and ask for their money back for the gift card. So our message to a lot of the retailers is be aware of this fraud, educate your employees that this is going on. We also ask financial institutions to look for this type of activity. When you're looking for it, it's pretty easy to see. You'll see the same account with a whole lot of purchases in big retail stores and then a lot of refunds from the same retail store. And so if you're looking in that account, it's pretty easy to see that activity, but you have to be looking for it. And also we're looking for financial institutions. If you see like unusual purchases going on from gift cards or cryptocurrency transfers going on, to be aware of this type of fraud. So I wanted to leave a little time to respond to questions that we might have from the audience. And I'm hoping that we have some, and I'd like to hear from everybody.
Absolutely. Actually, this is a comment to share. It says, not able to, wanted to pass this along. One specific example that this lady has seen, a business executive in the New England area, says emails that come from the WHO will be who.int. If you see who.com or .org, those are not legitimate domains. Something to share. I don't know if you've seen that across your desk at all.
No, actually, that one's a new one for me. So, yeah, that's very good information.
Terrific. And one of the consistent questions that we get, firstly, these slides, will they be made available?
They can be. They are free. I know you have them.
Yes.
If you want to distribute them, I am fine with that.
Terrific, because the last 10 comments I've had are the slides. Can they be made available? So for those, almost 300 people are actually with us right now. We are going to share all of the slides with you at home. And last and most basic and most important question, what is the scenario where the listeners should give you a call to call this field? Is there a certain thing, a certain scenario where they call the FBI or call the local police department? When do they call the Secret Service specifically?
All right. The FBI and the Secret Service, we both investigate cybercrime. And I know they have their own version of the task force. And I won't be offended if you go to the FBI first. There is so much crime out there, we don't really have to fight over it. So it's whoever you feel most comfortable with. I will say that our expertise tends to be with financial fraud hacking. So especially for businesses, they may want to come to us because of our expertise in doing financial fraud and our history going back before DHS when we were at the Treasury. We still have that focus on bank fraud and financial fraud, credit card fraud. As to when to call us, usually the earlier the better.
Okay, sure.
Even if it is just to reach out and say, hey, we think there is something. We may not do anything right away until you get more information, but reaching out and contacting us as soon as you think there might be an incident, it is a good idea. At least you will know who to talk to.
Sure.
You know my contact information now from watching this presentation.
Yep.
There's a few more guys in the Boston office who also handle this type of crime.
Yep.
It's not a bad idea.
We've gotten in 3 more questions, so let's hit them up. Are there any preemptive public outreach programs that small businesses can take advantage of that you know
of? This cyber conference right here.
No, that's great. Thank you. And of course, CIS. All right.
We do try to get out there. We try to get presentations just like this. This is the way we usually try to get to. And I mentioned our task force before.
Yep.
We usually try to give a presentation once a quarter where we give the latest trends, very much like this, and also tips. So you can reach out to the Boston field office. You can call that number on the screen right now. You can ask to join our task force, and then if you do join, we'll send out an email whenever we have conferences and let you know about it, and then you can attend and listen to the latest, trends in fraud and also latest tips on how to defend against the fraud.
Terrific. Here's another question. Does the U.S. Secret Service take the lead on cryptocurrency investigations?
Well, kind of similar to the previous thing, there's so much cryptocurrency involved in crime now. All of the major investigative agencies are working those sides. I can tell you we are definitely involved in cryptocurrency investigations.
Right.
Several of the cases I'm working right now have some type of cryptocurrency involved in it. I don't know if one particular agency has the lead.
Okay.
I'll tell you, it's more like if it's a financial fraud, it is more likely to involve cryptocurrency than not.
Sure. Excellent. Okay, Michael, thank you so much for joining us. Any final closing comments that you'd like to share
no.
with our New England audience? Okay. All right, guys, thank you so much. Michael, thank you so much for joining us. We just got approval, which is wonderful, from the Secret Service to share these slides, which will, of course, have Agent Pickett's contact information. So if you feel that you need to contact them, you've got that direct link right there. And to keep the conversation moving, we are going to continue to talk about home security with some great experts that are coming from Arctic Wolf and Mimecast. They should be teed up and ready to go. Michael, again, thank you so much. We're going to have Todd Malett and Julian Martin join us from 2 cutting-edge cybersecurity companies, and we've worked with them before. So we look forward to your presentation. Rock and roll.
Thanks very much, Bradford. We appreciate it. Everybody can hear me all right?
Absolutely, Todd. You're on.
Perfect. Thanks, Jules. So like Bradford said, my name's Todd Malett. I'm a pre-sales systems engineer with Arctic Wolf. Julian, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Jules Martin or Julian Martin on a Sunday. I'm VP of Business Development at Mimecast. Good to meet you all.
All right, so we're going to roll through these. Having some issues. There we go. All right, so we're going to look at email. So basically, the current state of modern email security is going to be the topic today that Jules and I are going to cover. From a very quick agenda perspective, we're going to look through email numbers and facts, kind of look at some history and trends, and then tie in how COVID is playing into those trends that we're all seeing. A look at modern email security, both with Arctic Wolf and with Mimecast. Looking at how detecting a phishing attack looks. And then cybersecurity in general using CIS controls framework, which is the Center for Internet Security, looking through their controls and how their benchmarks work and how you can better adhere to them to create a better security posture. So email numbers and facts, we'll kind of start there. This is a report that is generated yearly by Verizon called the Data Breach Investigation Report. And what this basically is stating is that over 1/3 of all breaches that they saw during this report being generated were directly involved with email phishing. So this type of attack is extremely pervasive. Over 1/3 of all attacks that were known to Verizon to be email-based involves phishing. So huge problem, and that's really why we're here and what we're going to talk through and how you can better address that and better protect yourself. Sorry, these slides are, there we go. All right, gotcha. So email, like we just said, you can see 3 different arrows pointing over to the different sections there. So email attachments continue to be one of the larger forms of a type of attack that's generated through email. Unknown attacks, of course, are going to make up a lot of those as well, whether or not they were registered. And then links, clickable links are becoming more and more of an issue, especially now with our, thirst for knowledge around COVID. But basically what this is saying is that of all the attacks that involved any level of malware, they were delivered by email 94% of the time, which is a pretty daunting number. So email security, I think, which is something that an application that we all deal with in our daily lives pretty much constantly, 24 hours a day, unless we're sleeping, is something that absolutely needs to be hardened, needs to be secured. And really that's what this is about, is giving you guys some knowledge on how to better do that. So we'll start with a little bit of history, some trends, some pretty interesting stuff here. I was actually pretty interested to learn some of this myself as I was going through this. So 1996 was when the term phishing was first created, and that was coined on an AOL message board, most likely installed with a free CD. 1997, a gentleman named Paul Vixie, he created the first blacklist, and the blacklist basically, as we all know at this point, is a list of known email spammers, where they could potentially be emailing you some level of malicious code, attachments, links, what have you. But 97 is when we first developed blacklists. The 2000 is a fun one. If you're old enough, you remember the I Love You worm. This was a pretty amazing virus that was spread via an email attachment that basically exploited some Microsoft vulnerabilities. This one was fairly unique in that it had the ability to look at your Microsoft contacts list and then email itself out to everybody within your contacts list using Outlook. At the end of the day, it was basically said that over 10% of the world's Windows-based computers got infected by this virus, and it was so pervasive that it actually shut down, or the CIA and the Pentagon actually shut down their email servers to protect themselves against this virus. So going back, 20 years, pretty advanced stuff, and it only gets more advanced, obviously, as we fast forward 2 decades. And then 2003, looking at all of these types of things that were occurring as email became more and more popularized, that's when Mimecast was founded to help combat all of these different types of email threats that we see then and that we certainly see more of today. All right, a little bit more history. So 2007 is when Gmail came out. I think that's probably the most widely used email platform right now. 2011 is when Microsoft introduced their Office 365 services, which are becoming extremely popular. More and more people leveraging those today, both personally and in a business platform. 2012 is when Arctic Wolf Networks was formed, and this helps detect, obviously, various forms of cyber attacks up to and including email attacks. 2018, Office 365 had 150 million users, and Gmail had 1.5 billion users. And in 2019, nearly 4.7 billion phishing emails were sent every single day, which is fairly amazing when you consider how many email users there are total. That's almost 1 email per user per day that gets sent that is a phishing attempt. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Jules. Jules, let me go ahead and pass you the ball. There you go, sir. You should have it.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we've heard from Agent Pickett and from Todd as regards to the rise and the proliferation of these email attempts coming through. And in today's situation, it's even worse. We're seeing a huge amount of information coming through, a huge amount of new websites, new domains being registered with the words coronavirus and COVID-19, and we're blocking these. And in this session today, I want to take you folks through the sort of things we're seeing, the sort of things you need to look for, and then what we can do about it and how together with Arctic Wolf, we can help you combat this. A second. Here we go. So the sort of threat impersonation attempt, first of all, we'll start there. This is a normal thing we'd actually have through. Now, one thing that we're seeing different about coronavirus COVID-19 situation is it appeals to everybody. And if you look at the numbers there from an email usage perspective, the 1.5 billion on Gmail, that includes a number of home users as well for our home email accounts. But the difference between this situation, the pandemic we're currently in, is it appeals to everybody. And people have a thirst for this knowledge. And the question earlier on, the World Health Organization did come up. And here you'll see within this somebody impersonating notification from the WHO. And you'll see the address there, notifications at WHO_PC.com. It's not really a true domain or email address. So we look at that delivery information that comes through. We look for triggers within there for newly observed domains, internal username matches, because people could be pretending to be part of your internal stuff. And also when it comes down to the supply chain and third-party spoofing as well. The second example we've got here, which will be Office 365. Again, fast usage. A lot of us in the business are actually on Office 365 or Microsoft 365, it's now called. They dropped the Office moniker to confuse everybody. But here, it's asking for action. Your account needs to be fixed. It needs to be really re-authenticated. And again, what we're seeing today is the same sort of attack being used in a different way, appealing to anybody. Before, if you were getting a Chase bank account alert and saying, please click here to actually re-authenticate your bank, that would only appeal to those people who have Chase bank accounts. Here, everybody's after the COVID information. So again, appealing to the masses. So we'd look for that pre-delivery information again. We'd look at rewriting all those URLs that come through. So when a user clicks on the URL in the email, we then go and check for you to make sure, because these can morph in the background. And the important thing here is that person may be offline for a while. They may be on vacation, maybe taking time off with the family during these times. But those solutions out there that simply convert and check at the gateway can be quickly out of date for those accounts that do actual morph. When it comes down to the awareness training, you've got to let people know. And in here, you can actually put a message in between during my working day. If I see there's an email containing the link, I click on that link, a message pops up and says, are you sure you want to go here? And then a little tip to say, keep your eye out for these phishing attempts and what have you. And we also use multiple scan engines to compare and contrast. Now, this one is actually attachments. Again, they're asking you to click, and it was referenced here by Agent Pickett in the first presentation, where people are asking you to pay invoices online. Very, very common type of attack. It may be something that's out of date. You may go to a trade show or a conference and think, well, yeah, that may have been something related. Always stop and check with a person and verify over the phone. Don't just simply check via email. They can be very clever in those sort of attacks. And again, what we're seeing now from a COVID situation, somebody, again, misrepresenting the World Health Organization, and there's actually a PDF there. So what we do from that perspective is we will look to convert any attachment that actually comes through our gateway into a safe file format. So we'll even convert PDFs to non-executable code PDFs. We'll take Word documents and turn it into a PDF. And this addresses a number of the key threats coming through, because at the end of the day, if it is a valid invoice or it is a valid Word document, you just want to read it anyway. You can always click and request, and it will go through a secondary check if you need to then get the original document coming through. But we recommend the multi-vendor, multi-layered approach, both on the inbound and outbound scanning as well. So if we look at this new digital reality in which we exist today, we've got a dependency on things like our staff and our colleagues to actually keep up to date with the latest patches, our IT teams. That interdependency when it comes down to using cloud-based applications like Microsoft 365. And then the regulation, which we're still trying to keep up with and adjust as we do, especially in the financial world where working from home is the new world order. And that creates a number of issues. If we then bring in the 3 chariots of doom, which is a human error, people clicking on those links by accident, those malicious acts which are still happening, those people, disgruntled employees perhaps, and indeed technology failure when things do go wrong, we lose a web connection, the internet access drops, etc. We're then in a situation that can cause seismic disruption to our organizations, which is a real concern because we've all got staff shortages. We're all working longer hours. We're all getting a number of, whether it be WebEx or Zoom fatigue out there, and the staff shortage is across the globe. There's just under 3 million open headcounts when it comes down to professionals with cybersecurity skills. That, combined with the complexity in which we're all living, is again adding to the problem. We did a survey recently, and it was anywhere between 40 and 75 solutions in place, but quite startling, a lot of the recipients and responses came back, said they only felt they were about 50% configured in those solutions. Now imagine, first of all, you're looking at 75 different consoles. That creates something which we term consolitis. But also, if you then look to configure those as threats come through in real time, you've got a major problem on your hands. And the respondents said, and 54% of them said that they were not confident in handling anything beyond a simple cyber incident. And it isn't just the case of we need to respond quickly now, we need to respond instantly. And that's what I want to talk to you today. We term it email security 3.0, where you look at the perimeter email security as we've always had around the exchange and notes in the early days, right through to pervasive email security. And if we look to, again, how we'd actually look at this from the established perimeter, you'll all have things in place. Hopefully you'll have a secure email gateway, most will. You'll have the targeted threat protection out there, and you'll have the data loss protection. That's vitally important. We can help you with those if you need to harden those, but also from zone 2, which is inside the perimeter. This is really important nowadays because people are being targeted in a number of ways, as I'll explain shortly, and you need to be able to respond very quickly from that remediation perspective. But also don't forget the security awareness training. In today's world, people will be tired, they'll be clicking on links which they wouldn't normally if they're in a mindset of the office environment. But the security awareness training is vital you keep up to date with that. And then you look at the other global threat intelligence out there, where you can then start to bring in feeds from other people and do a proactive risk hunting to measure the sort of exposure you've got as a business. But don't forget things like DMARC. Make sure the websites you own are absolutely hardened and registered correctly. But also then, for retail type organizations, financial institutions, anybody who's got a login page, think about the websites you don't own. There's a lot of people out there spinning up websites pretending to be your organization. You need to keep an eye on this and work with people like ourselves and Arctic Wolf who can actually help you take those down. So think about the domains you own from a DMARC record perspective and the domains you don't own from a brand exploit protection perspective. And then from all of this, you need an ecosystem-based SOC. And what I mean by this is an interconnected ecosystem. And I'll come on to that in a second. But you need to increase those response times because people are remote. It's not like everybody's in the office and you can immediately start to tackle this and look to actually maximize your security investment through things like APIs. Now, when Mimecast first started, as Todd said, we started and formed in 2003, before cloud really became a term. And we looked to do 3 things, which was to make an easy solution, easy to manage, easy to implement, easy to move across to, cheap, cost-effective solution, but also business resilient. And we started out with email security. And we based that on a unique operating system developed by ourselves called MimeOS. It's a multi-tenant environment with community defense. And within that, we've got machine learning, we've got data store, we've got traffic management, we've got the detection stack for DLP and policy enforcement, both for internal and external compliance. And we serve all of the things we address through APIs. You'll understand why that's important in a second. And as we go through these and we start to address and we bring in things like web security, data protection, awareness training, we base them all on the same platform to make it easy to manage through a single console. And those areas where we don't touch, what we now do is open up our APIs so they actually connect to these services. We still stand by trying to offer a single integrated suite for the products we own, but a number of those we connect to in things like your SIM and SOAR environments, you can actually manage those through either the Mimecast application or indeed the SIM choice of your the SIM tool of your choice. And we want to give you a predictable cost per employee subscription. It doesn't matter whether you actually have a slight increase or a slight decrease. We'll just look at it from an average perspective to allow you to easily budget for this. And that's what Mimecast does. So enough of that. Let's have a look at the API capabilities. But by linking into those other solutions within your organization, you can then deepen what you do from a configuration administration perspective. Make it easier for you to not log into different screens simply. When it comes down to security insights, allow you to drill down into that information you need and indeed look at that threat sharing between the solutions, helping you deepen the security investigation and indeed the response remediation times. It also allows you, in some cases, to actually spot something that's wild within your organization and then start to remediate by automatically pulling those emails out of the mailboxes of those people who've been compromised. We aim to give you a strong security architecture by these three particular tenets: the protect, detect, and respond. Protect by strengthening the perimeter, detect by gathering the intelligence and locating those vulnerabilities faster, allowing you to respond through automation. So if you see a threat coming through, why wouldn't you, from a gateway perspective, if you see anything coming through from the internet or your email provider, why wouldn't you notify immediately your firewall to block it, your endpoint to block the end user, the end user's client PC? You'd integrate it with threat intelligence to harden your knowledge around these particular threats. But you'd also then pass it over to your SIM to log and for logs and analytical data, and SOAR for then to start the remediation process and kicking off those playbooks, and your service desk from an ITSM perspective for raising the tickets, all fully integrated, all connected together, working as one with immediate response. If we give you just a basic graphical example here, we've got Sally who's happily working away from home and she's using the various sort of devices out there. And an attack comes through, and Mimecast will do a great job of blocking those attempts coming through. But the threat actor or the bad actor out there, they'll try different means. They're not just going to try one. They're not looking to break down the fortress. They're looking for an open window of which to exploit. So they'll keep attacking it in a number of ways. And what happens there, if you don't secure and inform those other solutions, Sally is then left exposed. If you look at it from an integrated environment perspective, Mimecast will integrate with most of the solutions you've got. Please check with those solution providers that they do have an open API. Ours is an open API program where you can take things off the shelf from integration and then add to it should you wish. But Mimecast will then work with your firewall, work with your SIM and your threat intelligence provider to provide a deeper knowledge, a deeper awareness and protection for Sally, who's continuing to work remotely. Todd, back to you.
Great, thanks, Jules. All from you here. Awesome. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and get into some examples on phishing attacks and how Arctic Wolf is addressing those and remediating against them / reporting against them for the companies. So what we can see here on this next slide, get it to advance, sorry guys. So here we can see what's becoming actually extremely common and we see quite a few of is a DocuSign email that is sent to an end user, and this is essentially a complete fraud. It looks extremely legitimate. We all know how the DocuSign blue background, clicking the review document as we all do, and typically we actually do this with DocuSign fairly quickly because it's usually related to either an HR event or some form of a pay event. So we're more apt to click these very, very quickly and go through the prompts without looking through them exactly as close as we maybe would for some other types of emails because we've learned to trust DocuSign. So basically this is asking you to review the document as you normally would. Then it's giving you a login prompt. which does look different typically than what you'd see for some DocuSigns, but it looks legitimate enough, right? Where it's listing out different types of login methodologies, be it Google or Yahoo or Office 365, and just asking you to log in. Once you do that and you enter your username and password for any one of those different things it's asking for there, they have your credentials. It's as simple as that. So we have started to see a ton of these types of attacks centering around DocuSign and a number of other standardized forms of things that, again, we as corporate end users are used to seeing. When that does occur from an Arctic Wolf standpoint, we are going to immediately notice that this is not coming from a DocuSign domain or DocuSign DNS. So we are going to understand immediately that this is spoofed in some way, shape, or form. So the initial discovery, you can see the red flag there. It's showing a different DNS record than what we would typically see from a DocuSign. This one also is lacking SSL. So that's kind of the first red flag that comes into our SOC. So what you're seeing here is a screenshot of the tool that we use internally to see these and allow our concierge security team to do some further investigations on this type of event. So next, what they're going to look for here is whether or not the remote host was false. Of course, this is a false remote host. We will recognize this as a form of a phishing attack. We will also know that the request being made here was for an HTTP GET. And really, the danger here is not necessarily with the GET. It's whether or not you did a post. So what we'll do next as we kind of dive deeper into this event is we'll see whether or not this user posted. So we can see that there were 57 GET attempts on this type of attack and one post. And what that post is basically saying to us is that this end user did indeed enter some information into this link. And what that essentially is going to be, of course, in this type of an example, is a username and password to one of those offerings that it gave to us on that very first list. Let's call it Gmail in this example. Once we figure that out, that there was a post, we will immediately step into action. We will create a ticket internally, of course, and then within minutes, contact the end user company. That can be the end user themselves, that can be the IT department. Quite frankly, it's however we've set this up from a customized standpoint with the end user company, how they want to be alerted of traffic. And you can see here, this is an actual event, a screenshot of an actual event rather, showing you the alert, the details, and the recommended remediation for what you should do to get rid of this. With an email phishing attack that actually captures credentials, obviously time is of the essence because in the case of some email applications, once you have the username and password, it's very easy to change that password and just essentially lock the end user out. There's certainly recovery methodologies above and beyond just a password for certain email forms, but sometimes that's not the case. So again, alerting extremely quickly with a very clear and concise description of what happened, and I think most importantly with a remediation plan on how to go ahead and fix this. The most important and maybe unique part about how we're handling this is we're not just delivering these tickets to a genericized email inbox that the company has set up for security alerts, because that creates alert fatigue and it lends itself to not being paid attention to. We are hand delivering this at a human level to another human at the end user company and making them aware of what has happened here. And of course, all the information is also available via their portal after that contact's been made. So next we're going to look at CIS controls, and these are fairly interesting. This is probably one of the things that we talk about most frequently with companies on how they can increase their overall security posture, be that with Arctic Wolf, with Mimecast, or just in general. And that's really what the CIS, or the Center for Internet Security, is concentrating on. So what we'll look at here, this is slide to advance, excuse me guys. There we go, oops, a little fast here. So this is an industry standard, again, a company called Ponymon publishes this yearly, and this is showing you how long it takes to remediate from an attack. So you can see it's 230 days is the mean time to identify. So that's the average time that attacks can just dwell inside of an environment. Once they are found, the mean time to contain those is 84 days. And obviously those two numbers coincide with each other, right? The longer that attack dwells in your environment, the more infections, if you will, it can do within the entire environment, and thusly the longer it's going to take to remediate that attack. Some other stats below that, 70% of companies are unable to process 60% plus of their data security. And really what that is it's alert fatigue. A lot of these tools and just products that are out there that aren't necessarily delivering at a service type level or providing value back above and beyond that of the product really just create alert fatigue and become easy to ignore. And the average cost to remediate being $1.22 million, that's a daunting amount of money for any company, small or large. So not something that you want to get involved in, obviously. So CIS controls, if you're not familiar with them, they are broken out into essentially 3 different pillars, if you will, or 3 different groups. You have your basic, your foundational, and your organizational. There are about 171 overall controls within this entire idea. And you can see they're broken out into different subsections within those 3 groups. And what we'll look at really is how Arctic Wolf is addressing those and how you can better adhere to them and easily, kind of plan to adhere to these. So this slide, we call it Mind the Gap. And what this is saying is, if you are successful in implementing all of Implementation Group 1, you are 26% of the way there overall. And then Implementation Group 2 is the big one. This is 57% of the overall controls. And if you add 1 and 2 together, you are 83% of the way there. Implementation Group 3 is more around people and process and training. And that makes up the additional 17% of these overall CIS controls. Next, we're going to look at how Arctic Wolf can help within all of these CIS controls. So a couple different pie charts here. The dark blue one, this is the 40% that we see within most customer environments that are already completed. And these are your normal day-to-day type of things or kind of table stakes for any IT security postures. So that's going to be endpoint protection, things like AV, maybe malware protection, firewalls, screen lockout policies, some form of email security, and then data protection, so backup and recovery, and maybe a DR plan. The rest of these fall into usually Implementation Group 2, which you can see there in the orange. Arctic Wolf by ourselves will completely satisfy 33% of those, or 19%. And then moving over to Implementation Group 3, we satisfy 4 of those. And then you can see, though, we complement 66 of them. So basically what this is saying is getting to Implementation Group 1 and 2, there's a huge level of assistance that Arctic Wolf can wholly satisfy. The remainder of those, the complementary part of it, is pretty interesting. All of these controls have different sub-controls within them. So in order to satisfy one, for example, like an application-level firewall, we are not an application-level firewall. But to satisfy that control, you actually need to have an application-level firewall, and you need to be looking at logs and aggregating logs, which is certainly something that we would assist with. So the overall posture that you can create leveraging something like an Arctic Wolf during your CIS or your benchmark journey is quite expansive, and we cover a very large portion of the CIS controls. Kind of break down a little bit more succinctly what Arctic Wolf is doing. You can see here, this is a very busy chart, but basically what this is showing you is kind of the 3 pillars of what Arctic Wolf is and how we do it. You can see physical sensors, agents, cloud connectors. So what we're really doing here is collecting logs from all of the entities within an environment. This is endpoints, firewalls, servers, cloud connections to AWS, Azure, O365, and different types of security platforms such as Okta, Cylance, things like that. These results are all reviewed by our concierge security team, which is a dedicated pair of individuals, human individuals, to an end user account that become a single point of contact for you. Again, none of this is just delivering it to an aggregated security inbox that you guys set up within a company. We're looking at logs and information from Active Directory, endpoints, email gateways, wireless access points, IoT devices, etc. And then from a threat intelligence standpoint, we're running multiple feeds, including our own, to look at different types of threats that emerge, and obviously looking at phishing, which is the topic of today's discussion, but also malware, credential stealing, Windows types of exploits, and then dark web exploits that may have pre-existing exposure of credentials available on the dark web. We'll be able to tell if those credentials are accessible, if they're in clear text, if they're encrypted. If they do happen to be encrypted, are they easily defeatable types of encryption? And then finally, geolocations. So we'll be able to ascertain and pinpoint exactly where any traffic coming into the organization is originating from. So if you're a company that is doing absolutely no business whatsoever with Luxembourg, for example, but you're getting a ton of traffic incoming from that country, that would certainly be something that we would raise a red flag on, contact you, and alert you to the fact that there's an increased amount of traffic coming from a country that you have absolutely no business in. So finally, little thank you slide. I very much appreciate you guys being here, taking the time away from your day to go over this. And if there's any questions, of course, I'm happy to ask or answer any of those that you might have. And Jules, I'll let you do your own outro if you'd like.
Yeah, thanks very much indeed, folks, for joining us today. Hopefully that was useful. How we operate together, we have Arctic Wolf and Mimecast have an alliance together where we try to combat and help organizations like yourselves on this call. But yeah, happy to take any questions. Bradford?
Great. You can hear me okay, right, guys?
Yep.
Terrific. Firstly, David, why don't we share, we have over 200 people on the line right now. Why don't we share some contact information to get in touch with Julian and Todd, if we can do that with the chat box right there. And this way we'll put up some email addresses. So if you've liked what you've seen, you want to follow up with them, get some additional answers, let's get that up there, David. And a couple of things to cover here. Anything that you can share recently, any security wins during the COVID crisis that you can kind of share with our audience that's not confidential?
Is that to me, Bradford?
That would be yes, to you.
Yeah. It's the amount of traffic that we've seen and questions that we've seen from COVID has been pretty outstanding. I think the very quick and swift move to a remote workplace created a lot of complexity and a lot of questions for companies as to how to address that. So our endpoint protection, or what we call our managed risk product offering, addresses that very well. So we've had a lot of customers leveraging that, protecting their users that are now outside of a corporate firewall, using endpoints that may or may not be as hardened as we'd like them to be. I know we have a lot of sharing of endpoints within houses, and now all the kids are home as well, and who knows where they're going or how many Fortnite games they're playing per hour. I know mine's about 100 an hour. So yeah, a lot of wins directly related to COVID, a lot of questions directly related to COVID.
Okay, I think this is for the Mimecast team. We have a user that says, I'm worried about changing my email security at this time. What can you guys do to ensure 100% of the flow of the email? I mean, doesn't Microsoft kind of already provide enough security? Like, how do you guys differ?
So two questions there then. So I'll come on to Microsoft in a second, but the onboarding of customers over to the Mimecast service, we've done for over 40,000 organizations across the globe. So we're very much used to this, and we've been doing it for many, many years. As Todd mentioned, we were formed in 2003. We've actually got a team of people who can help you through this. We can even handhold you through this, and a lot of them are actually based in Boston, where our US headquarters, where I'm based, actually is in Lexington. So we're used to doing this, and we'll take it in a very staged approach. So we'll move to looking at the inbound email first of all, and then we'll eventually move to outbound as well. This can take place over, we've done it in some cases in emergencies in a couple of hours, but can take place over a number of days. But the one thing we're proud of is the fact that we do have a 100% continuity SLA, financially backed, once you're with Mimecast as well. So not only can we help you move to Mimecast and transition over to a better platform, we can also harden you should Office 365 go down in, or any of these services you've got relying on email go down. Now, this is the time to move, because as people get used to working remotely, working from home and what have you, you've got the interconnectivity sorted. Now you need to make sure, as Agent Pickett referenced there with the VPN vulnerabilities, make sure that this technology you've now got in place isn't then exposed as people settle into, in some cases, as has been announced in the press, some large organizations are saying we'll allow people to permanently work from home. Now is the time to review what you've got. Listen to or review the slides from Todd on what you need to do from a SOC perspective. It is the time. When it comes down to things like Office 365 and the security inbuilt with Microsoft, we can add to that. And we have done a number of POCs with organizations which have taken, we'll sit alongside Office 365 or Microsoft 365, as we should be saying. We can sit alongside 365 and we'll tell you the difference, if you like, the delta between what we see and what they block. So we can actually go into that sort of additional layered security as well. So yeah, about 50% of our base are on Microsoft 365 as well. So very much used to that environment. But yeah, we can help you. Now's the time. Great question, Bradford.
Thanks. Well, there's going to be a tremendous amount of work from home. I mean, as we all just saw the recent announcement, Jack Dorsey, CEO of Twitter, said everyone could work from home right now.
Yeah.
So it is going to be definitely a brand new world. And
yeah, the new world order is here, whether we like it or not.
Yeah. Yes. You know, and he's already now set the benchmark, which means now so many other companies are going to have to follow that lead. Guys, thank you so much for your time, and we can share these slides, correct, with your permission to our delegates.
Absolutely.
Wonderful, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We do appreciate your experiences and your advice, and we will see you hopefully very, very soon. Okay, stay safe, guys.
Thanks very much, indeed, folks, for today. Cheers.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Okay, for those people that are still with us, and nearly everyone is still with us, we now are closing with our great security briefing from Ron Ford. He's the Regional Cybersecurity Advisor with the Department of Homeland Security. Their new division is called CISA. And that organization provides a plethora of complementary tools which have basically been already paid for by taxpayer money. So it's we'll get Ron on the line. Ron, can you hear us? Are you with us now? Oh, there you go, Ron.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Okay, I'm going to tune off and let our delegates get your experience and wisdom. So go for it. And thank you again for joining us. And thanks again for your service to our country, Ron.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're all kind of in the same situation in terms of kind of the new normal and understanding how we can all be better stewards of cybersecurity, even though we all aren't really focused on that. I think there's a greater emphasis on having a secure work environment now, especially at home. So we're all our own resident cyber experts. So I'm Ron Ford. I'm the Regional Cybersecurity Advisor for New England under the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency under the Department of Homeland Security. We are one of the, in quotes, newest agencies, but we've been around within the headquarters elements since the inception of DHS back in 2002. So I'm going to briefly go over a few tidbits of really great information, some resources that are available to all public and private sector organizations, as well as kind of give you some insights into how CISA is trying to tackle risk from a broad perspective, as well as reaching down into the different parts of the nation and availing those resources and providing that last mile, as we call it, for information sharing and collaboration. So, all right, let's get started here. All right. So again, I work for CISA. We love security so much that we put it in our name twice. As you can see, we really focus on kind of both sides of the house, where a lot of the efforts really focused on physical security, kind of the gates, guns, and fences. And then the other side of the house, we focused on cybersecurity. And so back in, I believe it was November of 2018, the president approved the separation for our own separate operating element under DHS. So if you think about Secret Service, CBP, ICE, FEMA, we're on the same playing level as those other agencies. So we've been designated as the nation's risk advisor to provide resources and education and elements so that organizations can be better at being more secure, and operationally having a way to bounce back when there are disruptions. So we focus on 16 critical infrastructure sectors. I'm not going to go through all of them, but we really try to focus on some key elements within them. So we focus on the cybersecurity elements that are all really based in information technology and how those critical business functions within those critical sectors would be affected if there were some type of disruption, whether it's intentional or unintentional. How those companies and organizations would be able to operate when there is some type of degradation of service. So here's today's current landscape, and I think we're all in the same boat in terms of being aware of cyber attacks, extreme weather. We're all in the midst of the pandemic right now. Typically, maybe one or two of these risk vectors are really prevalent. Right now, there are a lot of different vectors and verticals within the threat landscape that are really on the forefront and right in front of us right now, and that we're trying to manage. So we have a big responsibility in terms of how do we organize ourselves as a nation, as a country, to help to manage and reduce the risk. So what I really try to focus on as cybersecurity as an enabler, really try to focus on it not being an impediment or a challenge for companies and organizations and the users to do their business. So we focus on it trying to be an enabler so that they can function properly, securely, and that they can understand that cybersecurity is a part of the risk management framework for a lot of organizations, whether they understand it or not. It's something that needs to be focused on because a lot of the business functions are supported by people, information, technology, and facilities. So if it's not on the landscape right now, there's always the opportunity to highlight cybersecurity and the risk associated with that. So my program is the Cybersecurity Advisor Program under CISA. In a nutshell, I serve as an advisory Chief Information Security Officer here in New England for a lot of the different organizations that are really trying to focus on being better about being resilient, being prepared for if and when there is some type of disruption. So I carry a lot of buckets of water, I would say, and information to these organizations where we focus on assessing. So I am a practitioner by trade, but I focus a lot on leadership engagement. I also promote those best practices and risk mitigation strategies, as well as building those relationships and partnerships, because that's key. It's really key. Also, education and awareness. Through everything that I do, I try to promote it as an educational opportunity, whether it's doing assessments or providing a keynote or working on a panel. I see it as a way to educate those who are trying to be more cognizant and aware of what are the risks out there and how they can tackle that the risk. The last couple are about listening and coordinating. So I talk a lot, but I also love to listen because I have to bring back information and understand what's the landscape of organizations in terms of their readiness for those cyber threats. So the way that we kind of tailor our resources is we listen, and then we refine and retune, and then we put them back out for organizations to take advantage of. The last bit is coordinating. So we do incident coordination, both from a regional perspective and from our headquarters perspective down in Virginia. So we have an incident response team or teams that are able to fly out as appropriate. And I'm also on the ground when there is a significant cyber incident where we need to do some type of hand-to-hand coordination with an affected entity. So here's our current landscape. We are a small but mighty group, I would say. There are currently 25 cybersecurity advisors geographically distributed across the country. If you're interested in learning who might be your CSA, please feel free to contact cyberadvisor@cisa.dhs.gov. We are a great resource. We are always looking to make new partnerships and collaborating with other entities. We're focused a lot on that. That's our primary goal, to step outside of Washington and to understand what are the challenges and the obstacles, as well as work on different projects and partnerships. So as you can see, I am the lone CSA in New England, but we are currently hiring for additional positions within New England. So I wanted to touch a bit on COVID-19 and how CISA is playing a role within that. If you want to stay up to date with what our current efforts are, please feel free to visit www.cisa.gov/coronavirus. It's our main landing page for all the different efforts we have going on. We've also published a CISA Insights that is free to everyone. You can understand how we're trying to tackle risk management around COVID-19, as well as we talk about telework guidance, securing those virtual private networks. A lot of good tidbits of information now that we have a lot of people working from home, and that presents an additional risk area. So also, I wanted to highlight on May 5th about CISA and the United Kingdom's National Cyber Security Center. We jointly published a information product that focuses a lot on the major cyber threats to the healthcare sector. It seems to be that the healthcare sector has always been a hot target, but now that we have a lot of organizations, healthcare providers and biotechnical organizations that are in the midst of doing a lot of research and development around vaccinations and solutions to help reduce the coronavirus impact, they're now a hot target. So we've been able to publish an information product that focuses on that. We're also reaching out to those healthcare organizations to provide levels of cybersecurity assistance to them. So if you're interested in learning more about that, feel free to reach out to us as well. So in the midst of COVID-19, we still see the same types of threats with, I would say, a different coding on it. Now there's a COVID-19 theme type of dressing on all the different new threats that you see, whether it's a new website that pops up or it's an unsolicited email that comes into your inbox. They all have this nice new shiny COVID-19 coding about, hey, we've solved, we have a new vaccine that's been out, and learn more about donating to this, or going to this website to learn more about the COVID-19 mapping. We always emphasize to go to the trusted organizations, whether they are the state governments or federal governments, the Centers of Disease Control, CISA, those state government websites. And also, I would highly promote Johns Hopkins University, who has been kind of on the forefront in terms of understanding how the global impact and how they've been able to organize all that information and data. So those threats, they haven't really changed, in terms of social engineering and ransomware. Password management still seems to be a huge problem. Those phishing campaigns, as you saw earlier, from the previous presentation, phishing campaigns are becoming really, really good and look really legitimate nowadays. But you have to continue to be aware, also with business email compromise, where you have bad actors who are able to impersonate and take control over email accounts. Insider threats, still a big issue. Whether they are intentional or unintentional, the human being, we're always going to be a huge risk factor. Patching and updates for software. We understand that there are priorities within these organizations, but we also have to understand what are the risks and impacts if we don't do proper patching. As we've all been, I think, been really aware of the supply chain issues now, kind of external to cybersecurity and IT tech, and IT, there's still a big issue with, the supply chain for IT hardware and cloud services nowadays. And in the last couple, are, as prevalent, as I think, as they've been over the last few years in terms of the advanced persistent threats, the nation states, who are typically the well-organized, well-funded, highly capable groups that if they want to target you, they will target you. But it's up to you and up to us to be as prepared as we can be to help reduce the impacts if they are able to compromise the systems. If you've ever heard of defense in depth, it still is relevant. And I think in terms of having a comprehensive, holistic approach to cybersecurity is really, really important nowadays. Because now that we're looking at also the Internet of Things, it continues to open up different types of risks to the environment. So DHS, and within CISA, we really focus on the critical service and the organizations that use those critical services, and that they're supported by the people, the information, the technology, and the facilities. Now, being that those are really critical and important and key to accomplishing the business and the overall mission and objectives, we have to understand that disruptions will occur. And when they occur, how well poised are you and your organizations to reduce the impact, but also continue to operate? So if the people and the information and parts of the operations are disrupted, do you have the plans? Do you have documents in place to help to mitigate and work around some of those disruptions? We talk a lot about playbooks. We talk a lot about exercising documents, business continuity plans, contingency plans. You're only as good as the last time you tested it, and your ability to provide those lessons learned to improve upon those documents and processes. So the next time you are more efficient, you can reduce the impact. So we really do try to emphasize that. So best practices. We have a lot of buckets about best practices. I'm going to go through these very briefly. But in essence, you make your own luck. How do you make your own luck? I look at it as you being prepared. You put yourself in the right position, whether it's championing training and awareness, or getting leadership to help to own the issues, being aware, also providing and demonstrating good cyber hygiene. You need to understand what's on the network, how you can provide some protections around that, understand what's really important, vice, things that can, be impacted, but they won't, impact the major critical business functions. So we look at those crown jewels in terms of the high value assets that are important to the overall succession of the business. We also talk about defending and continuing to operate. That's where you start to really think about, all right, now we have all these different solutions and processes in place. How can we continue to operate based on what we have in place, as well as now that we've exercised, what are those lessons learned that we can feed back into the process, into the solution, so that we can continue to operate, but also defend off some of the noise that you all see and hear, when you have thousands and thousands of hits every day. Risk management, where can you start to accept, transfer, and mitigate and reduce the risk areas? So you have to have a balance of both the mission, the balance of security, and the balance of accessibility and privacy to both your internal users as well as your clients and your customers that you're serving. And lastly, leverage the relationships. I always say, and you've probably heard this before, about exchanging business cards before something happens, because you don't want to have that first phone call to your security vendor to be when you're in some level of distress. You want to make that connection, provide those agreements and mutual assistance agreements before something happens. So this is where we really try to emphasize, you want to have all your ducks in a row before something happens. You never know when it's going to happen. Something will happen, but you have to be aware that you need to have a lot of preparation and readiness up front before something happens so that everyone knows what they should be doing and what the process is to mitigate those impacts. So it's really important for you to understand, and what we at CISA, we promote is you have to do some type of assessment, whether it's doing some type of phishing campaign or you're doing an audit or an assessment. You have to understand where you currently are in order for you to improve upon where you want to be, and also to determine what goals you want to get out of those assessments and to be more resilient. So we really do try to emphasize, if you're doing audits, if you're doing assessments, that's fantastic. If you're not, I think this would serve as a great opportunity that would help to get you started down that path. So here's my used car salesman portion of the presentation. I'm going to go really heavy on this, but I will caveat everything that everything is voluntary. CISA and DHS, we are not a regulatory authority within cybersecurity. All of our services and materials and resources are free. You've already paid with them through your federal income tax dollars. So we provide them as a trusted assessor, as a trusted partner with you all, so that you can understand where you currently are in terms of your posture, and also where do you want to be so that you are ready for that next incident, so that you can tackle it, mitigate it, reduce it, and get it out the way so that you can continue your businesses. So I'll go a little bit over our cybersecurity offerings. So our incident response teams, they are awesome. I call them the cool kids because they're able to fly out, put hands on keyboards, do either remote or on-site assistance, do malware analysis, all the fun stuff that I can't really do, they do that stuff. But I do have a hand in that in terms of working with the affected entities and providing a clear path between CISA and our incident response team and our affected entities. So again, my office, our cybersecurity advisor program, we provide advisory services, we conduct assessments, we do the working group participation and collaboration, we promote best practices every single day, and the incident assistance coordination that we really do promote. Now, as I mentioned earlier, on the other side of the fence, our physical security folks, our protective security advisors, they're the ones who do the physical design assessments. They provide incident liaison partnerships, also working on some of those special large events around the country as well. So if you think about the Super Bowl, if you think about the Boston Marathon, the New York Marathon, also all the way down to the festivals and all those large scale activities and special events, we have a hand in that. We work really well with our interagency partners across the FBI, across Secret Service, to understand, what's the risk associated with that. So if you're interested in some of the physical security services as well, please feel free to contact us. So our assessments. So here's how I bucket both sides of our assessment. So we have the strategic assessments where we look at maturity, we look at implemented security controls, we look at things from a more strategic outlook in terms of how ready you are in terms of process maturity as well as operational resilience. On the other side, we have our technical folks who do the technical network service security assessments in terms of facilitating the phishing campaigns, doing the vulnerability scanning and cyber hygiene activities, as well as architecture design reviews. And last is the vulnerability, risk and vulnerability assessments. All these things are fairly comprehensive, and I try to emphasize that they can be very comprehensive, but they are extremely worthwhile, and I think worth a lot of people's time so that they can understand where they currently are as well as where they want to go, but also help to justify the need to be resilient so that they can promote that up the chain as well as down to the lower level staff. So a little bit more incident reporting. We have our own 24/7 security operations center. It's the CISA service desk. If you feel the need that you want to report or you feel the need or feel compelled to report, please feel free to contact us. We have our 888 number, 888-282-0870, or you can send an email to us at CISA@cisa.dhs.gov. A lot of people want to understand and ask the question of, when do you report? Well, it depends. It really depends on the affected entity. If you feel that you have, overwhelmed yourself with trying to manage and mitigate the incident, feel free to contact us. We'll give you some assistance. We also try to emphasize, if you're able to provide us with as much information, please feel free to send that to us. So if it's malware or artifact of the malware, feel free to send it to us. We'll try to help out as much as possible. Last but not least, here's my contact information. So feel free to contact me. Here's my email address. Here's our cyber advisor email address. If you want to learn more about what CISA does as a whole within cybersecurity, there's the link. Feel free to do a screenshot of this as well. I'll give a shout out also to our ISAC, our Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center. They are the nonprofit side that provides essential services and response activities as well. If you want to learn more about them as well, please feel free to contact us. And Bradford, I'll leave it to you.
Okay, thank you so much. You might hear my doorbell going on and off, but hey, that's home-based work right now. You said before we could share these slides with our audience, correct? So that they don't have to
Absolutely
write down. Great. So to all of I'm getting dozens of emails, slides, question mark. Yes, to all those that are still with us.
Yeah.
Yes, we will share those slides with you. It'll come to you in a few days, along with your CPE credit and a link to download these slides. And let's see, we have a question. The reporting is that only done for government agencies?
So in terms of reporting to DHS, if you feel compelled to report, it is not just for federal agencies. It is for all public and private sector organizations. If they feel the need to contact us to submit a report, they'll feel free to contact us. We have no authority or obligation to compel you to do that. It's all about the trusted partnerships that we have in place.
Okay, great. We have an interesting question because I know you guys are, I won't say understaffed, you've got a great team, but you probably need some talent. One of the IT security folks out there said, how could I possibly apply for a job with you guys? Do you have a portal on your website? And is there an age limit or requirement? How does that roll?
Yeah, so great questions. I would say there is an age limit. You can't be a newborn and apply, but yeah, you can go to CISA.gov. We do have and I can't remember, I'll make sure I send it to you, Bradford, but there is a section that we talk about new cadres for both new graduates as well as looking at careers within CISA. There is a page within our CISA.gov main landing page that we talk about careers. So there are opportunities out there. It'll point you towards USA Jobs. That is our main repository for all the job announcements that we have.
Terrific. And a follow-up question to that, is CISA hiring in Region 1?
We are hiring right now within Region 1. So we have, I believe, 5 different positions. So you will be joining my team as a cybersecurity advisor. If you are selected, I would encourage you to go right now to USA Jobs, type in CISA, type in cybersecurity advisor. Cybersecurity is one word, and go in and take a look and apply.
Terrific. Ron, thank you so much for your time. Thanks to those people that have joined us today. We really appreciate, again, your service to our country. You are definitely, certainly one of our heroes. And I thank all of our speakers. We've just slide up there as well for follow-up with all of our people. And again, thank you so much. I know you've got to go back to fighting crime, but thank you so much again, Ron, for joining us. Thanks for the slide sharing. And for all of those that are out there, thank you so much from the Cybersecurity Summit. We're going to be back in New England next month with a brand new set of speakers and some brand new content for you. So thank you again for joining us. And Ron, you take care. Stay safe. Wash your hands, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.